How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you very much for this discussion. In this episode of the Business Monitor, we focus on the ecosystem of startups. And I know you are a big believer in the Greek startup ecosystem.
I am.
So my first question is, what inspired you to move to Greece and invest in the local scene?
Yes, a good question. Look, I say I'm married to a Greek goddess, and we came here on a whim, honestly, during the pandemic. We lived in New York, everything was crazy, and we were just talking to people back here during the pandemic, and everyone seemed happier, calmer, sunnier, and so on a whim, let's go. And we'd actually, I don't know if you know this, but in 2012, at the depth of the economic crisis here, Ella, my wife and I, we came to Greece very deliberately to consider, should we move here? You know, we're startup investors. I gave a talk at TEDx Athens, one of the best I ever gave because Ella wrote most of the script. And it was about how crises is actually a good time to start an entrepreneurial journey. People more willing to take risk, work for less cash, more equity. And then we toured the ecosystem. So we're in 2012 now, 13 years ago. And that was a very short tour, I have to be honest with you. Like, there was not much going on at all, and people's mood was deeply pessimistic. I can understand why. I mean, the economic crisis was intense. You know that better than I do, right? And so for a lot of reasons in 2012, we decided not to move to Athens. We went to New York. We lived there for a few years. We did our own startup. We invested in startups there and around the world. 2020, pandemic, crazy. We came here.
And you stay here.
And we stayed here. Look, this is home now. My wife is Greek. She's always been Greek, right? But our daughter has become an amazing little blonde Greek kid. I'm a wannabe Greek.
I know you love Greece.
Yeah, I do love Greece, right? But when we came here, so only 8 years had passed since that talk and our tour. And it didn't even occur to me to ask, could an ecosystem have meaningfully emerged in just 8 years? And then we started meeting startups. We're still in lockdown, right? So there were no events, there was no festival, no tech events, but we started meeting startups one at a time. And we're like, these are really cool startups. We made our first investment in a company called Pnoe. They do an insanely cool metabolic testing device.
It's a great company.
It's an amazing company. As I wish I'd met them earlier. They were a little later stage, right? But we put in a check and then word got out. There's a new investor couple in town, right? And by now we've done 10 investments. And what occurred to me little by little is that, to my phenomenal surprise, right, in just 8 years, Greece has gone from zero to quite a lot.
So you started checking startups here and investing, but now I see your t-shirt.
Yes.
And I see the name of Panathina.
Yes.
So let's talk about Panathina.
Yes, please.
How did this idea for this modern startup festival came about?
Yes, it's a long and incredible journey. It's probably the most exciting thing I worked on for a decade. I feel like I'm back in being a startup founder, although I'm actually just a mentor to this incredible young team.
You have a great team of young people here.
Look, I'll tell you this. If this team represents Greece's youth, so with 5 executives, all in their early 20s, if they're at all representative of the youth of this country, Greece has a bright future. And I mean, I'm like, I wish I could buy stock in the country. It's like, they're incredible. But to answer your question.
How do you find these guys?
So, we met in Finland. Of course, that's where Greeks go to meet each other, right? We met, Slash.
Yes,
you've been there, I think, right? So I think one of Europe's best, if not the best, startup conference. Let me go back a little bit, actually. So a bunch of people in the ecosystem had looked at how Web Summit in Lisbon and Slush in Finland, big international tech conferences in small emerging ecosystems can dramatically accelerate the growth of that ecosystem. And we thought, look, Greece has an incredibly strong hospitality industry. Why don't we use that to build a huge international tech conference, and then that will help this already rocket ship of an ecosystem growing faster, right? And it just so happened back then, so 2 years ago, a huge American conference wanted the European home. Like, they have one of the biggest technology and actually cultural festivals. It's about innovation across both technology and culture, and they were looking for a European home. They asked 5 European cities to make proposals. They picked Athens, my wife and I and many other people in the ecosystem, Endeavor Greece, many of the VCs, informally assembled a team.
This, yeah.
And yes, we assembled a team to put together this proposal. Right? We actually raised 60 million euros in just a few months, all internally in Greece. I've never pitched any project ever in my life that had such universal appeal. You know, in startups, if you pitch a startup and 1 out of 10 says yes, you're doing really well, right? But pitching this particular idea of buying an international festival brand and putting it in Athens, it was like 9 out of 10 yeses. It was crazy. And so we wrote the proposal and we actually ended up, it was a competition with 4 other European cities. And many of the Americans really fell in love with Athens, recommended to the board that it should be Athens. This was the more creative part of the organization in America. Unfortunately, the more money-oriented side of the organization, they wanted to play it safer. And in the end, they picked London. And so this particular American brand decided they wanted to do an event in London.
They chose London.
Yes, and Greece was a close number 2. We joke, you know, London got the brand. We got free tickets to the event in London.
But this was the start.
But honestly, you know, it was disappointing, as you can imagine. But it actually has left Greece the room to build something I think would be much better, Panathinaia. And so a bunch of us had a discussion. What can we build on our own, using all the momentum we created in pursuing this foreign brand?
And the know-how.
And the know-how, but also assembling all the people that organize events here behind us, right? And so this thought came up, which I love, that, hey, the Olympic Games, modern Olympics, biggest sporting festival in the world, is a modern version of the most popular ancient Greek sporting events. And so we went and consulted with the world's greatest classical scholar, ChatGPT. I think you probably know her, so smart. But then we asked Chatty, hey, was there any other popular ancient festivals that we could reimagine into something?
Yes, Panathinaia was an ancient festival.
Exactly. And honestly, I hadn't heard of it before this conversation. And when I sell this concept abroad to my network abroad, no one really has heard of Panathinaia. But the more I learn about it, the more I think it's the perfect historic treasure. I think of it as the original startup conference, the original innovation festival, right? That started 2,500 years ago, lasted for 1,000 years. They had the greater Panathinaia every 4 years, in between the 4-year Olympics. I think it was more popular at the height of it than the Olympics, and people came from all over the Greek world for 12 days, mostly of competition.
Yes.
In Athens, but in everything. Craftsmanship, engineering, poetry, music, theater, boat races, chariot races, foot races. And I love this Greek style of competition. I think it's called amila.
Yes,
where
amila.
The purpose of the competition is to raise everyone. And I think that this festival, Panathinaia, was an important part of how ancient Greece improved its future. They went together every 4 years and competed everything to find the next big thing. Right? They competed with boats to find the fastest ship that could win them the next naval battle. They competed in engineering to find out how to build better aqueducts. They competed in theater to find the next iteration of this art form that was brand new. They had even just invented it, and then they wanted to evolve it. Right? And so, from an innovation point of view, sorry, I'm talking too much. It's the perfect thing, and you combine this idea with Greece's incredible strength in hospitality, plus this young but rocket ship of an ecosystem. I think Greece has the potential to build Europe's, if not the world's, biggest, most important innovation festival.
So you met the guys in Slash and they pitched the idea to you.
The day this really started was the day we met Lefteris. And it just so happened that this was in Finland, of all places. Right, so this idea of Panathinaia had been floating around the ecosystem, and we had asked everyone, both abroad and here, to help us build this. And no one had courage, the ambition, until we met this young team. And so
Lefteris Katsiadakis is the CEO of
he is the
Panathina.
CEO of Panathina.
Okay.
Yes. And he will work on this for a few years. He will create something incredible for the country with his amazing team. And then I'm hoping that he'll go do a startup and then he'll allow me to invest.
To invest,
He
okay.
promises to consider it.
So you met Lefteris in Slas and you decided to think about an event here in Greece. And the event is Panathina, but I would like to ask what to expect in the first edition of Panathina in terms of speakers and initiatives.
Yes. This year, it's going to be primarily focused on tech. In the future, we'll branch into more cultural things, innovation and culture. And so it's a 3-day affair. We're hoping 2,000 people will come. The primary event is a startup conference at the Athenas, the Music Conservatory.
Yeah. Στο 2.
Thank you. and we have an incredible lineup of speakers. And by the way, the entire Greek ecosystem again has gotten together to back this.
Many mentors and
Many
fund
mentors.
managers and entrepreneurs are supporting this
All the
idea.
VCs, many artists too, like Lefteria the Co, built the lighting on the Parthenon, and all the VCs, and we're all working together to create a truly international event. And so when you look at the speaker lineup, like our headline speakers are the founders of Canva in Australia, and tell the story of how they created this worldwide industry-changing success without moving to Silicon Valley first, which I think in particular in the first year, many of the attendees will be from cities more like Athens that have everything it takes to build startups like this, a good-sized population, world-class universities, hunger for this sort of thing. And we want to tell many stories about how it is indeed possible to build not just regional successes, but worldwide successes from any town like that.
What's your vision about Panathina and your personal hope for this?
Well, look, honestly, my personal vision is the much better ideas the team has come up with. But I think even just in a few years, Panathina will become a big, sprawling, umbrella-like festival all over Athens. I think as many as 100,000 or even 250,000 people will participate. And we'll have a number of distinct, different things, a big startup conference, a big music festival, a big film festival, theater, food, philosophy, wellness, everything, all with the same ethos that we're borrowing from the ancients.
Are you going to be a speaker, I think, in Panathina?
I was trying hard to avoid it.
Yeah, because you have an amazing journey to entrepreneurship. And I would like to speak a bit about this. Before 20 years, I think, back to your roots with your brother, I think also.
Yes.
You invented the online maps. And Google supported it, and we have the popular Apple, the Google Maps. It's my favorite, I can say, because I use it everywhere, I think everybody. So, can you take us back to this journey, how it started?
Thanks for asking. Happens to be my favorite story, as you can imagine. So it actually started during crises. Dot-com bubble, huge crash in the Nasdaq. Lost 80%. I think it took a whole decade before stocks were back where they were, and everyone was laying off. I actually worked for a startup in Silicon Valley called Digital Fountain. Professor, friend of mine out of UC Berkeley had started it. I was one of the first engineers. My brother had come from Denmark to join. When the market crashed, that startup did not survive. And we got laid off. My brother before me, he's the smarter of us by far. And by the time I got laid off, he called me and he's like, Lars, we're going to work on maps. And he had this simple but brilliant idea. Like Maps Online was already a thing. MapQuest was the biggest player in the US. I don't know what the biggest one was here. Many European countries had like a national app mimicking MapQuest. And MapQuest back then was a web page with a little map and a bunch of text. You could barely read the map, and if you wanted to move a little bit east, you had to like click a button and the entire page would reload.
I didn't know that.
No, but it was quite popular still. You know, it was the only thing available. And MapQuest had really pioneered the idea of online maps. And my brother had this very simple idea.
To elevate this.
Yeah, he said, look, Lars, we should make that map bigger, prettier, and faster. And you spend a few months polishing this idea. And the way I remember the story is I was immediately sold. When he tells the story, it took me days to realize his genius, but it still ended up with us starting this company. And it was just the two of us. Like, we couldn't raise money, just the two of us. We built a prototype, we tried to raise money, completely failed.
It was hard because we had the crisis, right?
There was a crisis, and all the investors were completely pulling back. I mean,
They didn't believe you in the start.
Well, I mean, they just weren't investing. We had no names for ourselves. We hadn't done anything in particular. We were just these two Danish brothers. And also there was this thing that actually turned out to work in our favor. There was this belief that maps couldn't make money.
How Google decided to support your vision?
Well, so when we failed to raise money and we were broke and out of options, someone introduced us straight to Larry Page. And we went and demoed it to Larry. And he's a man of few words.
It's a great opportunity just to meet him, okay?
And it was amazing. Look, and we were, you know, we tried to hide our nerves. I mean, he was the biggest hero of ours back then when Google was.
He was like the co-founder.
He was one of the co-founders with
Yeah.
Sergey Brin, and Google was like the one company that didn't even shrink. I mean, they were the only ones that kept hiring when the market crashed, right? One of the hugest success to come out of that era, I think. And so it was thrilling to demo to Larry. And Larry had a different approach there. He wasn't so concerned with, can we make money or not? He just thought this could be a good part of Google's mission, which is to organize the world's information.
And the ecosystem of Google in general.
Exactly, and so we actually estimated that if you look at all the information in the world, about 10-12% of it has location as an important part of it. And so if you want to organize that part of the information, you need to understand maps and geography, and having a maps product in itself was useful. And so Larry bought it for that reason. Google bought it for that reason. And
the rest is history.
The rest is history. Look, I mean, it was so thrilling. We were 4 people in my company. We had a prototype almost ready to launch, but no money to pay for servers to launch, and some patent applications that were being considered, right? And so Google bought us. They added 2 engineers, actually 1 product manager and an engineer. And the 6 of us, maybe the 7 joined right when we launched, right? That's all it took to launch Google Maps, and it took off from day one. And yes, the rest is history. I think several billion people use it
We
in
all
a
know
month.
Google Maps now in our cell
An
phones.
incredible.
You also joined after this Facebook and many companies. When you decided that you want to leave back the giants of the Silicon Valley, become an entrepreneur or an investor again?
I started angel investing with my wife 10, 12, 15 years ago. That's a side thing. You had some success. People started knowing about me, a little bit of money, and then young entrepreneurs would come to us for help. We would typically, the model is that we would write a small check, 50 to 100,000, but then we'd also help. Actually, one of the earliest startups I invested in, I think 13 years ago now, is Canva, whose founders are speaking at Panathenea. And I met them when it was a young couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, graphics designer and a business student with this insanely ambitious, amazing vision, but no tech team. Thought, look, if we can help them find the tech team, then they are a good investment.
So it's more difficult to work for big companies like Facebook or create a company?
Those are very different challenges. Although Google and Facebook, they work hard, and I think they're quite successful, making it feel like a startup inside and continuing this super innovative, very fast moving kind of atmosphere that a startup has. But there are different challenges, as you can imagine. In a big organization, it takes longer to sell your project, make sure it's aligned with all the other things going on. All of these things can take a while. When you're a small company, what takes a long time is to try and raise funds, hire a team.
It's very difficult.
You have to do everything yourself.
Large, many startuppers are watching this episode, and I would like to share some tips for them if they want to start now their company, what they should know.
So the first thing to make sure of is that the problem you're solving is important enough, both to the world, but also to you personally, that you're going to be willing to go through all of the intense challenges you're going to face.
Okay.
And then the next thing is to call me.
Yeah.
To let me invest. I mean, this is now how I make my living, is to invest in young people wanting to change the world, just like the team building Panathenea. And then, most of those things don't work out. This is the fact of life in startup. 9 out of 10 startups don't make it, right? But every now and then you get these incredible hits like Canva. And I've invested in several things here in Greece that I think has that potential. In fact, the office we're in here, where the Panathenea team works, belongs to a startup called Proteo, that I'm a proud investor in. They have a platform that lets Greeks quickly renovate apartments. Like you rock up on the platform, you enter some data, they tell you what's it going to cost to renovate it, they help you find the contractor, finance
Proteo is a
Amazing.
good company based on Athens.
Exactly, yes. And I'm a proud twice investor actually in the company, and I've helped them bring other investors in. And it's one of the 10 or so Greek startups I'm super excited about.
So I hope you can find more ideas to support and help going from startup to scale up and merchandise their products. And I'm going to meet you in Panathina.
Yes, please.
Good luck about this, Lars, and thank you very much for this discussion.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Είμαι ο Λευτέρης Κατσικαδάκης, είμαι co-founder και CEO στα Παναθήνα, τα οποία θα γίνουν για πρώτη χρονιά φέτος, 7 με 9 Μαΐου, σε όλη την Αθήνα. Η συνάντηση με τον Lars ήταν πολύ ιδιαίτερη, καθώς από όλα τα μέρη που θα μπορούσαμε να γνωριστούμε, γνωριστήκαμε στο ΣΛΑ στη Φιλανδία το Νοέμβρη, όπου εκεί είχαμε πάει μια μεγάλη αποστολή από την Ελλάδα μέσω της Endeavor από το ελληνικό οικοσύστημα, και την τελευταία μέρα του event γνώρισα τον Lars, όπου τον προσέγγισα και αμέσως έγινε η σύνδεση και βγήκε η σπίθα για τα Παναθήνα. Αμέσως μετά το Ελσίνκι, για την ακρίβεια στο αεροπλάνο που γυρνάγαμε, κλείσαμε τη συνάντηση για την επόμενη μέρα, όπου πήγαμε για καφέ και ξεκινήσαμε να δουλεύουμε άμεσα για τα Παναθήνα. 7 με 9 Μαΐου θα δούμε ένα φεστιβάλ σε όλη την Αθήνα, το οποίο θα λάβει χώρα σε πάρα πολλά εμβληματικά σημεία της πόλης, και σαφώς θα παρακολουθήσουμε αρκετές ομιλίες, workshops από ξένους ή διεθνείς ομιλητές και ομιλήτριες, και σαφώς αρκετό κομμάτι networking, party και σίγουρα ένα closing ceremony ανοιχτό σε όλη την Αθήνα με φόντο την Ακρόπολη. Τα Παναθήνα δημιουργούνται από ομάδα φοιτητών και πρόσφατα αποφύτων, όπου διοργανώνουμε όλο το φεστιβάλ, και σαφώς έχουμε την υποστήριξη από έμπειρους μέντορες από όλο το οικοσύστημα τεχνολογίας, καινοτομίας και πολιτισμού, όπου συμβάλλουν και μας βοηθάνε με κάθε τρόπο στη διοργάνωση αυτή. Τα Παναθήνα θέλουμε να γίνουν το σημείο συνάντησης των ατόμων που θέλουν να αλλάξουν τον κόσμο μέσα από τον πολιτισμό, την τεχνολογία και την καινοτομία.